Hey everyone, welcome to another edition of the Polite Society podcast presented by the Second Amendment Foundation. We're going to start recording here in just a second, just checking to make sure all the streams are running well. Looks like everything is, and I want to remind everybody that for those of you that weren't watching the Daily Bullet, 30 minutes ago, that unfortunately our software that brings the social media commentary in from YouTube, from Facebook, gives it to me so I can put it on screen. That's busted right now. I cannot put your comments on screen. I can still see them. So if you've got a good comment you want us to talk about, go ahead and comment on either the Facebook or the YouTube video, especially if it's funny. I will get it on the air. So, let's see here. I think on my end, we're ready to go. Everybody got show notes ready to fly? All right. And we're all ready to go, right, folks? Yeah, I'm getting a thumbs up and head nods. Here we go. Okay. Here we go. Masada Ayub in 5, 4, 3.
Hey, gang, this is Masada Ayub from the Pro Arms Podcast. I'm here to remind you that our podcast is a member of the Self-Defense Radio Network, and I'm going to suggest you do what we do and check out the other podcasts at selfdefenseradio.net.
Treat every firearm as if it's loaded.
Never point a firearm at anything you're not willing to kill or destroy.
Keep your finger off the trigger until you are on target and ready to fire.
Always be sure of your target and what lies beyond it.
Hi, and welcome to the Second Amendment Foundation's Polite Society podcast. We're recording this one on Monday, November the 22nd, almost Turkey Day 2021. I'm Paul Lathrop.
I'm Charlie Cook, and on tonight's show, we'll talk with Tom Knighton about some of his recent articles on bearing arms.
I'm John Richardson, and we'll talk about crime in L.A.
I'm Robyn Sandoval, and we'll talk about Ohio getting a real shot at constitutional carry. So climb aboard.
Strap in.
And hang on.
Episode 602 of the Polite Society podcast starts right now. All right, it's Monday night. That means it's Polite Society podcast night. And normally at this point, I would say, Rob, what's up with you? But Rob is otherwise undisposed. But the ghost of Rob has been writing in the show notes tonight. So I guess I'm kind of at a loss. But we're going to go with John. What's been up with you since the last time you were on the air, man?
Well, I went deer hunting on Saturday afternoon. And despite what the naysayers would have you believe, people actually do hunt with AR-15s. Mine was in 6.8 SPC2, which is almost the equivalent of a 270. I did see a yearling doe that I decided to live another year. I also picked up my venison from the processor, and we will be having a venison roast for Thanksgiving. How about you, Robyn? What's on your plans for Thanksgiving?
I'm heading out to West Texas to see my in-laws, and it'll be a nice, quiet trip there. I just had the best week ever last week. I took a group of 14 women up to West Bend, Wisconsin, and we all became certified USCCA instructors. And that was so much fun to be there at their headquarters and learn from them and just be in that community with them. So I was really excited to bring home 14 new certified instructors. So I love that our girls and a girl and a gun are always looking to expand their credentials. So that was a lot of fun. And I just grabbed a spot in Craig Douglas's close quarter concepts class for next weekend. So I'm really excited about that. So that'll be a really fun thing to do after the holiday break. Charlie, what about you?
You are such a rock star. I had someone in France post some Gungram clips, and he's a YouTuber called Joyka. So I've been getting a lot of fan email from the French, and they're looking to get some Gungrams for birthdays and for Christmas. This past weekend, there was a gunmaker event at Cape Gun Works in Hyannis, Massachusetts, and Rob Pincus was running the course. Unfortunately, I missed the education day, and I also missed the shooting competition, but I was able to film a different type of show with Rob and Toby, who's one of the owners, and a couple of the other guys that were at the event. So I will be editing that this long weekend. Paul, what's been up with you?
Not a heck of a lot. Just been working on, scheduling for Daily Bullet, scheduling for the Weekly Bullet, and we had, I was really pumped up about the Weekly Bullet coming back online this past Saturday, and I put a lot of time into that one. A lot of effort went in beforehand. We just kicked off about 45 minutes beforehand. I went into panic mode because we don't have internet. So I went and reset the router. Anybody who has cable internet knows the routine. You go reset the router. You have to do it about once a month. I go in, I reset the router, come back, internet's back, do a speedtest.net. Yeah, man, we're rocking. We've got rock star internet. Kick off the show, and Teresa Einecker, Teresa Einecker is the guest, and Mike Piwowarski is joining me as the commentator. Teresa's having a little bit of connection issues, but Mike and I are handling it. We're talking about the Rittenhouse case and a few other things. Teresa's able to we're able to get the technical issues with her straightened out. She comes in and things are just starting to click and everything's great, and I lose internet hard. And we're about 25 minutes into the 1 hour show, and the internet didn't come back all that day. I was out of the internet. Not only have I lost internet, which that sucks, but most of my house is covered. I have Amazon devices. I'm not going to say her name, that control the lights, control everything in the house, and our TV, we don't have cable. We have a smart TV, and all of the TV, we have a Roku, and we pay for streaming services, and so there's no TV. So Susan and I, for almost all of Saturday, are entertaining ourselves by watching videos on our phones, But it is what it is.
Wow. It's like caveman times. You actually had to talk to your wife.
Yeah, I'm telling you, man, it was rough. It was rough. So, and I guess, so now we know that Charlie's stalkers are all coming from France. There we go.
Great.
Yeah, my brain is not working, but you started telling that story, and all I could think of was that comedian that made those. I mean, he was from the 60s and 50s, 60s, and 70s. His big shtick was he was a pratfall guy, but hey, lady, I cannot.
Jerry Lewis.
Jerry Lewis. Charlie Cook is the new Jerry Lewis.
I was going to overdose on Nyquil, or I wasn't going to overdose on Nyquil, but now I think I might. Oh, yeah, Charlie Lewis, Charlie Lewis, Charlie Cook, the Jerry Lee Lewis in the gun community. Oh, man.
The French loved him. They gave him the Legion of Honor and everything.
They gave him a rifle, dropped once. What's the old joke? If you like the French, raise one hand. If you are French, raise both hands.
All right. Well, let's do this. I think we've given Charlie a hard enough time to start the show. We'll get back to that later. Let's jump off to our first break because we've got our guest Tom Knighton waiting for us in the wings. We're going to take our break. We're going to hear from SAF. And when we come back, we're going to talk to Tom Knighton about some of the stories he's written recently on Bearing Arms. Hang on, everybody. Right back right after this.
Joe Biden and Kamala Harris have vowed to take away your Second Amendment rights through gun bans, gun confiscation, and government regulations. Now, Joe Biden is no longer hiding his real intentions, and we need you to take action now.
Whether it's a 9mm pistol or whether it's a rifle is ridiculous. I'm continuing to push to eliminate the sale of those things. But
The Biden administration is coming after your right to own any gun, and we need you to text PROTECT2A to 474747 now. Joe Biden has already issued executive orders. He is now demanding Congress push through radical gun legislation. You can fight back to stop Joe Biden's gun grab, but you must text PROTECT2A to 474747. Take action to protect your right to keep and bear arms. We urgently need millions of Americans to text PROTECT2A to 474747. Again, text PROTECT2A to 474747 right now.
Hey, and welcome back to the internet. This interview. So I cannot talk today. As somebody was hired to talk, that's not a good thing. Welcome back to the interview segment of the Polite Society podcast presented by the Second Amendment Foundation. Joining us tonight, Tom Knighton. I call Tom Knighton the attitude behind bearing arms. Tom, thanks for joining us tonight, man.
Hey, thanks for having me, man. Happy to be here.
We've got several stories that we have been talking about featuring when you came on tonight. Let me go ahead and bring one of them up. What it means when the NYPD recovers more ghost guns. And as you can see right there, by Tom Knighton. And let me just do this. I'm going to click Tom Knighton and see what happens. Wow, that guy writes a bunch. Look at all these stories. It's almost like it's his job to write there or something. Anyway,
right?
Tom,
weird.
The NYPD says there's a lot more ghost guns showing up, but you've got an interesting take on that. Is it that there are more ghost guns or just more guns? What, you know?
Well, it's first we have to understand that when the NYPD starts going off about, we're seeing this increase in ghost guns, they're not giving the full context. You know, it's growing, but it turns out it's like a couple hundred guns in New York City. You know, they had thousands and thousands of violent crimes committed with firearms so far this year, and 200 ghost guns were recovered. It doesn't sound like much of a problem. But yeah, a lot of the problem is the fact that there's just this increase in guns in general. People are trying to get guns. They're worried about the economy. They're worried about violent crime. They're worried about all kinds of things that are going on in the world. It's been we've seen the NICS numbers for the last couple of years, and it's just been this steady increase of people buying lawful firearms. Well, people who can't get a gun lawfully in a place like New York doesn't mean they're not going to try to get their hands on a gun. And sometimes that's going to mean a quote-unquote ghost gun. It doesn't mean anything else. And when you really look at it within the context of the total amount of crime in New York City, the total amount of firearms that we're talking about here, it's a non-issue. It's less than 1% of the firearms being involved.
Yeah, and let's be clear about this. Even how do I the criminals are not looking to get guns just to commit crimes, although that's part. They're also looking for guns to defend themselves from other criminals.
Absolutely. First story I ever wrote for Bearing Arms was about CBS News got in depth with, they were talking to a bunch of gang members, and the gang members are saying, well, I got to have a gun to protect myself because this guy sees me on the street. He's going to take a shot at me. I got to be able to defend myself. You know, they're not that different from us in many ways, including having this idea that they really don't want to get shot.
Mm-hmm.
So they're going to carry a gun to prevent from being shot.
Yeah, it seems a lot of people are allergic to lead.
Yeah, lead poisoning is not a good thing, especially when it comes at you at a couple thousand feet per second.
Right.
That increases the toxicity of the lead.
It does. It does.
All right, let's.
I wonder if the cost of the guns, of the quote ghost guns, is one reason, an illegal gun in New York has got to be fairly expensive, given the New York gun control laws. I wonder if it's just an alternative to build it yourself because that's all you can afford.
Well, yeah, especially when you look at something like 3D printing. I know Rob was with, or Charlie was with Rob Pincus this past weekend. And Rob, for example, has 3D printed a number of firearms and shared it on social media. So I'm not, breaking any taboos or anything. But, he's done it and he's done it perfectly legally. But the technology's there. 3D printing nullifies gun control in ways we never could have imagined before it. And yeah, you can crank out a Glock type receiver, lower receiver, for pennies. Really. And, so that's going to drive the cost down, and you can still get the parts. Even if you can't buy a kit legally, you can still order a barrel, a slide, a trigger group, springs, all, guide rods, all those parts individually. And it's still probably going to cost less than, getting a gun off the black market in a very limited black market.
Mm-hmm. Get a couple comments in here. Larry Benson says, lead turns to gold when it saves your life.
Oh, I like that.
They've been trying to turn lead into gold since the Middle Ages. And it seems that Larry's found a way. Charlie Chambers says, there's no such thing as ghost guns. Whoops. It's a pejorative. Homemade weapons have been legal since 1791 and made it home for centuries. Yeah.
When I use that term, picture it in quotation marks. Because that's usually the way I write it. For just that reason.
And Dana says that the amount of my brain isn't working right now, I'm sorry. The amount of not infection, the amount of what am I trying to say? It's lost to me. Depends on the location of the injection what the reaction's going to be.
Right. It's all about bullet placement.
Yeah. Charlie,
like shoot him in the leg.
You were saying that Charlie was saying that the amount of allergy depends on where it's injected. There you go.
There we go.
Sorry.
Yeah, the toxicity does increase, center mass,
vital organs,
places like that. Yeah.
Arteries. John brings up a great point. In Philly metro area, any gun can be a ghost gun. Any gun without a serial number. If somebody scratches a serial number off or sands it off, that's a ghost gun. No matter if it was homemade or if it was stolen and then somebody took a Dremel to it. They call that a ghost gun too.
Yeah,
which of course boosts up the numbers.
Right, it does, and that's a little Jedi mind trick about cooking the books on the numbers. If somebody filed a number off of a serial number off of a gun, the anti-gun folks are going to say, "Ooh, it's a ghost gun." No, it's somebody that had a gun that had a serial number that did something illegal, but now you want to make it seem like it's classified as a homemade firearm. It's not. It's still illegal.
Well, yeah. And that's been an issue for decades.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's millions of totally 100% legal firearms out there with no serial number. They were just made before 1968.
I own one that I have to confess to because there are pictures that are on social media of it, and I may own more.
Oh, I do.
Just depending on...
Stephen Gutowski did a story about buying a J.C. Penney semi-auto shotgun that was a ghost gun. It was made in the late 50s, early 60s. No serial number.
Yeah, I own a model 304A Savage bolt-action rifle that was pre-1967 when you had to stamp a serial number on the on the firearm. And as I said, I may or may not own more depending on who in the federal government is watching at the moment. But
I lost all my guns in a tragic boating accident.
See, I think we need to take a field trip to Georgia and do some magnet fishing. I think that's what we need to do.
You can, let's be honest, you can magnet fish all over the place. Because for some reason, gun owners are the crappiest boaters on earth.
Right.
Yeah.
We take all of our guns out in a boat for some reason, then tip it over and lose everything.
Well,
it's a tragedy.
It's a mystery.
CNN ought to be concerned about our safety in boats, because they certainly seem to be now concerned about our safety when it comes to the police. And this same guy, Tom Knighton, wrote about this here, a couple days ago. And let me scroll down here. It seems that, we all remember this case in Colorado where the concealed carrier stopped the man who had killed a police officer. The concealed carrier stops the bad guy. Another police officer shows up, and unfortunately the concealed carry person was fatally shot. Now, a lot of reasons that could have happened, but CNN says, this is another reason why nobody should carry, because you're just going to get shot by the police.
Yeah.
Well, then if you're an undercover cop, you're just going to get shot by the police. And it's happened.
Yeah.
It has. You've had off-duty officers carrying that have been shot by their fellow officers, and it usually falls under a handful of circumstances. In a lot of cases, the good guy with the gun hears, "Drop your weapon," and thinks he's talking to the other guy. And so they don't respond, and the officer just rolled up. He doesn't know that's a good guy. And so a tragedy happens. Sometimes it's, hey, drop the gun. Who, me? Turns around, not thinking about where the gun's pointing. The officer sees it as a threat, fires, and another tragedy happens. What CNN failed to note is how rare that kind of thing is. Concealed carry has been on books for decades in numerous places. There are millions of people walking around with a firearm on their person every single day. There's, based on the numbers of defensive gun uses, someone is using a firearm to defend themselves multiple times every single day, and that's the case they can find.
Yeah.
There's not that many. It's on a long enough timeline, anything can happen. Okay? On a long enough timeline, Kate Beckinsale calls me up and asks me out on a date. All right?
That's a long timeline.
That's just it. The question is, how long is the timeline? Well, when you've got millions of people doing something every single day for years and years and years, you're going to find anomalies that can prove a point, or can prove a point. And that's all they really did with that. And does anyone here, there's 5 of us here, does anyone really think CNN gives a damn about our safety? Show of hands. Just what I thought.
As I messaged to you earlier, Tom, I think when this story that that caused when the good guy unfortunately was gunned down, I think when they were reporting on that at CNN, somebody in back of the camera was back there doing a happy dance. Anything that is bad for personal freedom, that makes CNN just giddy.
I would like to say, no, that didn't happen, but, I have to face reality that if it wasn't that exact scenario, someone was thinking it.
Yeah. This is also a good case to point out why it's important to get some good training on self-defense, whether it's taking a USCCA course or the Mag 40 class, or listening to self-defense gun stories to see what you should do if you are involved in a shooting. It's
really
good to know how to handle the
point, Charlie.
situation.
Last week I was with some ladies and we were playing on the simulator, and it was all fine until, we're doing dueling trees and just different target engagements. But there was a couple scenarios based in there, and I told these ladies, if you're going to be doing the scenarios, I want to hear you use your words. I want to hear you address the bad guy. I want to hear you address everyone else that I'm the good guy. Like that kind of practice and de-escalation, and if possible, but using your words in case of an incident, taking command of the situation is just so important that a lot of people don't practice the word part of the shooting.
Yeah, I remember seeing a video a couple years ago. They were talking about, and it was some anti-gun video on how people shouldn't carry, and they gave guns just like you're talking about. Did some scenario training on video with people that had no training, and it's just a person standing there, and the image on the video comes out and shoots the person, and they end up, getting shot and dying. And then they show someone that's been a police officer for 17 and a half years. And this guy, pulls out the Weaver stance, gives some good, strong verbal commands. And they're like, look, the cop can handle this situation. The cop's been doing this, man. They've had some training. They've had some education. They've had to probably do this a few times versus somebody who's never had to do this, who needs some education.
Yeah, you get what you got there. Some confirmation. It's not really confirmation bias, but it's like they presented a very biased argument. I can put 5 guys on the street and have them do anything that they've never done before or are unfamiliar with, and then put somebody who's been doing it for 17 years and say, "Oh yeah, see, you don't know what you're doing." Well, yeah, you don't, because you haven't gotten trained.
Absolutely, and it's if you are going to carry a firearm, then you need to get some sort of training and think about this and play the what if game and run through all this stuff.
And honestly, hopefully the mechanics of using your firearm and being able to present it on target and carry it responsibly, other armed citizens will recognize that as proficient use of a firearm and recognize you as a good guy.
I would strongly recommend, if you can, get to a force-on-force class. I took one at the Firearms Academy of Seattle as part of an active shooter interdiction class a couple years ago now. And even though I got killed by Marty Hayes twice, I still think it was one of the strongest learning events I've ever had in my life.
I agree. Robyn and I did some scenario training at the Faster Saves Lives in Ohio, and I got shot 4 times by the same guy.
Hey, look, any day.
Not a stalker. Shockingly not by one of my stalkers.
Any day you can get killed 4 times and still go home to complain about it's a good day.
Yes.
Oh my God.
And it was a good memory I'll take with me forever.
That's awesome. I love that you started laughing as soon as I brought it up.
It's one of my favorite situations in a firearms class ever in my whole life. It was hilarious.
So all I really wanted to do is I just wanted to go into a room and scream swear words. And that's what I did, and I got shot. So, lessons learned.
It was not exactly verbal judo. Let's just say that.
You weren't de-escalating, Charlie?
No.
You had a clear shot from the door and instead engaged with a whole bunch of string of expletives. That drew fire upon him.
Wow.
But he's learned, so now you're ready for anything, right?
Right. So, exactly. I got that out of my system.
So Charlie effed around and found out.
I did.
Want to get a couple comments in here before we go to break in about a minute. Charlie Chambers says, Thanksgiving is on us. Thanksgiving is upon us. Put on your stretchy pants. Charlie, you got your yoga pants on, man?
No. I'm pulling a Ron Burgundy. What are you talking about?
I don't even want to know what that means.
What's the saying that we have around here?
Pants on, gun on. Absolutely.
Well, my gun might not be on.
That's really more information than we needed to know. And please keep your seat. Wow.
I'm joking.
Yeah. Understood. Larry Benson says, not all classes and not all instructors, especially LEO instructors, are the same. Yeah, that's absolutely true. And check out your instructor. Look up their curriculum and check out their reviews before you take their class.
You know,
don't be afraid to walk. Don't be afraid to walk partway through a class if they're spouting BS. Don't feel like you got to sit through it. If it's, if it turns out you got in a bad class.
I'd rather give up the money I spent on a class, even if it's a significant amount of money, than to have an Alec Baldwin happen.
Oh my gosh, we've all seen the video of that DEA agent, right?
I'm the only one professional enough. One professional enough to handle a Glock 40.
Yep, I use that in every class, and I tell people, I'm like, look, when the guy that's in charge of gun safety shoots himself, class is dismissed. The money you paid him was an insurance policy that you don't get shot. Get up and leave.
Those kids in that video, if you watch, they were actually handled it really well until he picked up the AR.
Yeah, until he asked for an AR.
And then they're like,
I think that's why it's so important that those people who are visible in the firearms community can make recommendations of instructors that are trustworthy so that people don't have to waste their consumer dollars on idiots. There's so many good instructors out there, so definitely reach out to people that you admire and see what classes they're taking and take those too.
And I know each and every one of us here, including Tom, well, maybe not Tom, but all of us, the rest of us here, you can reach out to us, and we all know instructors that we would feel happy to recommend. Tom, he's just kind of off in his own little world. But anyway, we do. I
mean, you're not wrong, but still.
He's right here.
We do need to step aside and break. Tom, can you hang out for us to abuse you one more second, man?
Hey, it's either that or my wife abuses me, so.
All right. We're going to hear from ACLDN, and we will be back to abuse Tom and Charlie Moore right after this.
This portion of the Polite Society podcast is brought to you by the Armed Citizens Legal Defense Network. If you carry a defensive handgun, you need protection from the aftermath of prosecution. Even if you do everything right, you can be the victim of an overzealous prosecutor or even be falsely accused. That is where the ACLDN comes in. They provide immediate assistance when you need it most. If you find yourself under arrest, they immediately pay bail money and the retainer for your attorney. Additional funds are available for trial and civil proceedings. Beyond the money, they have far and away the best team in the industry, providing you invaluable information and training DVDs that are included with your membership and who stand ready to work with your lawyer on your defense. People like Masad Ayub, John Farnham, James Fleming, Tom Givens, Emmanuel Capelson, Dennis Tueller, and led by Network President Marty Hayes. Initial membership is only $135 for your first year, and you get 8 incredible training DVDs and other educational material when you join. If you don't have tens of thousands of dollars to defend yourself at your disposal right now, you need to be a member of the ACLDN. Go to armedcitizensnetwork.org and become a member today. And please mention that you heard about them on the Polite Society podcast.
Okay, welcome back to the Polite Society podcast, powered by the Second Amendment Foundation. This is our second interview segment with Tom Knighton, the attitude behind bearing arms. I want to start off with, I've been mostly watching the Facebook side. I can watch one kind of thing at a time over here because I've got this, which is like 6 things over here, and I got a couple things over here, but I've been mostly watching Facebook over here, but we got a comment over on YouTube I want to get to. Ian says, it's funny how California gun laws have such high praise in the media, but they never talk about how Hollywood is exempt. Tom, you want to take a crack at that one?
Oh, yeah. The Hollywood funds a lot of the Democrats. Is it really surprising that when they start restricting laws, there's carve-outs for the movie industry? You know, nobody is going to donate to the guy that ruins the latest blockbusters. And so, it really, once upon a time, movies were all made in California. And so, California had a very California laws had a very prominent role in how the film industry did stuff. And so there had to be carve-outs. Well, now you can go to other places. Georgia, where I'm from, we've got a lot of movies are made here. Most of the Marvel movies have been made here. And so there's options now for people to go out of state. So if there wasn't a carve-out, that money leaves California's economy. And California also loses a little prestige because if it gets too bad, do you think MGM is going to keep their studio in Los Angeles, or are they going to set up shop in Atlanta
or Reno or Phoenix or even north of the border in Canada? Where is it?
Vancouver.
Vancouver, yes.
Vancouver, yeah. They film a lot of stuff in Vancouver. So it's there's not a lot of talk about the fact that the movie industry is exempted from a lot of those laws. And it's done in a kind of a sneaky fashion because they're not actually exempting any individuals, it's companies. It's the same kind of, some of these very high-end armed security companies get the same exemptions, which is why Hollywood actors you should not be able to have a gun while there's a small army stationed in their basement, that could, probably overthrow a couple third world dictatorships, and they're worried about the paparazzi coming over the fence.
And the bodyguard that's right beside them has a bulge that's way too big even for a Mac 10. I mean, yeah. All right, let me get this. Where is it? Right here. This is the one I wanted to talk to you about. This one is a little bit more than a few days old. This one, I think, was actually posted earlier last week. Again, written by this Tom Knighton guy. And when teachers fail to see beyond their own anti-gun bias. Tom, one thing I love that you wrote about in this one is that one of the teachers, well, I don't know anybody, I know a lot of teachers, and I don't know anybody that wants to carry a gun. Well, apparently nobody that they know has ever heard of something like Sandy Hook, like
Parkland,
yes, or any other school shooting. Yeah,
it really that whole story. I came across it, and I spent so much in my this was me about every 2 minutes reading that story. There was, for a college professor, I can't really say for a college professor because I kind of expect stupid from them, but there was an inordinate amount of stupid in one article. It was really kind of impressive. We need to come up with a rating scale so this could get into the Guinness Book of World Records. It was right up there. Because the teacher on one hand's like, well, I put this on Facebook and, all of the teachers on my friends list said this. Okay, yeah, it's like Pauline Kael in New York saying, well, I didn't know anybody who voted for Nixon. Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, you wouldn't. But your circle is not the totality of the world. It's who you associate with on Facebook are people who are more likely to share your views, especially in the way things have been the last couple of years where everybody's getting blocked from disagreeing. So you've got that, and then this person's like, but our classrooms should be considered sacred spaces. And I'm like, okay, that's great. What are you going to do about the maniac who doesn't respect that?
Absolutely.
Because, you can sit here, if we can't keep maniacs from trying to shoot up our churches, which even atheists agree has some degree, if anything's going to be a sacred space, it should be our churches. If we can't keep maniacs from trying to come in our churches and kill people, how do you think your belief that a classroom is sacred is going to have any impact on anybody anywhere in the world? It was absolutely flabbergasting. This person who I believe, if I remember right, they teach philosophy, which, what else are you going to do with a philosophy degree? But, you would think that in the course of being a philosopher, you would come across the idea that just because you think of something in a certain way doesn't mean everybody else is. And to sit here and go, well, our classrooms are sacred, we shouldn't introduce guns. Okay, I shouldn't have to introduce guns in my daily life. I shouldn't feel, there shouldn't be enough crime in the world that I feel like I need to carry a firearm. There shouldn't be enough crime that I feel like at times that, my son, before he turned 20, had a 12-gauge shotgun in his room because I may not be available when something happens in the middle of the night and he's on the other side of the house for me and my wife. All of that is cases of what should be the reality. But it's like I always say, we don't live in a perfect world. We live in this one. And you can't just wish bad things wouldn't happen.
Well, that's the point of a sacred space should be secured. And we just have different ideas on how it should be secured and safe for our kids.
Right.
Couple comments here fast. Go ahead, Tom. Sorry.
Oh, I was just going to say, the fact this teacher doesn't want a gun, that's fine. I don't think anybody should feel obligated to carry a gun unless you're a police officer, in which case you signed up for the job that comes with a gun. You don't like it, get another job. But, for a teacher, you don't want to carry a gun, okay. I think it's a bad choice, but it's your choice.
There will be some that do.
Yeah, right. Absolutely.
And we don't need anyone knowing who, because that guessing is enough of a shield in a lot of cases. It's for example, Utah's had armed teachers for years, and guess what they haven't had? School shootings.
I think it's really important for all teachers and administrators to read the book Why Meadow Died. It talks about the Parkland shooting, and if you're a parent or you work in a school and you have not read this book, I strongly encourage you to read it, because it talks not just about the physical security aspect of the school, but the whole systemic problem with the way discipline is handled and the way it was actually 50 different people or 50 different stopgaps that could have prevented the Parkland tragedy that didn't, because the system failed. The sheriff's department failed. So all parents and all administrators need to read this book so that classrooms are sacred spaces.
Yeah, that's a good suggestion.
I want to recommend one more book, as long as people are. The book, Andy Brown wrote. What the heck was the name of his book again? I'm gonna have to rely on Amazon here. For some reason, my brain is not working on me.
But it's a matter of having important conversations too. I have those conversations with my school district all the time. Recently, my daughter was taken outside prior to a fire drill. They came and got her and took her outside because she's blind, and they didn't want her to be disoriented. And they called me to tell me that, and thinking that I would be, thank you for. And I was like, how is she going to know how to get out of the school in a fire drill? How are the teachers going to know how to get her out? So you'll redo that again and do it the right way. But just parents being involved in ensuring the safety of our children. We can't just leave it to people who want to sugarcoat it. We have to, like you said, prepare for the world we're in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, my son's senior year of high school, they did an active shooter drill at his high school. And I'm like, so what are they telling you to do if a shooter shows up? They're like, well, hide in the classroom. I'm like, what are you going to do? He's like, I'm going to throw something at the bastard.
Yeah, absolutely. You got the book?
Yeah, I got it. I put it up here. Warnings Unheeded. Twin tragedies at Fairchild Air Force Base. We've had Andy on the air here, and that is how do I put this? In almost every active shooter situation I've heard of, or active killer, because I shoot a lot, I suppose you could call me an active shooter. In every mass murder situation that I've been aware of since I read this book, every time there is warning after warning after warning after warning. And these are all, he's going to turn his life around. It's going to be okay. He's just having problems. He'll work through them. Right.
You need to take the warnings very, very seriously when you're seeing them, because yes, someone might work through it, but wouldn't they work through it better if someone steps in? I can't think. The whole, oh yeah, they'll figure it out. I stumbled through a lot of my life because he'll figure it out. Well, I really didn't know how to figure it out. I could have used some help. Now, I was never, voted most likely to, shoot up my high school, but, I still had difficulties and stuff that, if people were just figure it out, I could have used some help. How many of these kids, people were like, well, he'll figure it out, when some intervention, even if it came from law enforcement, would be the best thing in the world for them.
I love this article that you wrote too, Tom, because it gives the argument. I love how you share both sides. It gives the argument that they're making, and then it's a counter argument. So if somebody's Googling this, looking to affirm their own position, they'll find it and then find a really straightforward response from you. I really like how you frame it.
Thank you. That's kind of my style. I like to argue.
That's what Mrs. Knighton said as well.
yeah, she did actually. But no, it's I've been on the other side. At one time in my life, I thought gun control was probably a good idea, and that kind of changed because, well, if you can't value 9 of the 10 amendments of the Bill of Rights, and so I changed my views, and then I educated myself more and more, and so I know the other arguments. So I can look at it and I try to show what the overall argument is, and I'll show why I disagree with it. And if there's something later on that I think is relevant, I'll say, in all fairness, they do go on to say this. I'm snarky. I'm a bit of a jerk at times, but I don't want to be unfair about it.
I just got the social media feed fixed. So, Dana, you're first up. Tom likes to argue with himself.
Well, yeah. In fairness, sometimes it's the only intelligent conversation I can find.
You never call, you never write.
Like I said, intelligent.
Yeah. Larry Benson says, nobody seems to investigate what drove people to that point. Were they bullied in school and nobody listened? Well, there are at least a couple of instances like the book Warnings Unheeded and the book Robyn mentioned. Why? I'm sorry, Robyn.
Why Meadow died. Why Meadow died. It talks a lot about how an individual got to this point and all the people who tried to intervene, and either the system prevented them from making change, in the case of the sheriff's department, or in the case of the teachers, the school system. If you read Why Meadow Died, it will shock you.
Yeah.
It was the most preventable tragedy in American history.
Well, Tom, we've come to the end of the segment again, and to be quite honest, we've had enough of you tonight.
Yeah, okay. I get that.
We're not this mean to all of our guests.
No.
Oh, no.
Just
I'm special. I can take it.
Sometimes you give it to one of the co-hosts as well. By the way, I just want to put that on the record.
Yeah, but it's you, Charlie.
There you go.
That's what I'm trying to say.
Last time I was on here, Charlie even screwed up the name of the podcast.
Wasn't it just time for this guy to leave?
I'm telling you. Tom, I would be really not doing my job very well, something I have been done on occasion, my job poorly. But I got to ask you, man, if people want to get some more of Tom Knighton attitude, how can they do it?
Well, they can find me on Twitter at the Tom Knighton. I've also got a newsletter on Substack, tomknighton.substack.com.
Very cool. All right. Tom, thank you for joining us, and hopefully I haven't chased you off and you'll come back and join us again, man.
I'm a glutton for punishment. I'll be back anytime you want me.
All righty. Thanks again. And folks, we are going to step aside to break. We've got a news segment, and we will get to that right after we hear, excuse me, from CNJFO.
New Jersey is a civil rights wasteland where an unconstitutional law known as justifiable need keeps ordinary citizens from exercising their right to bear arms. New Jersey spits in the eye of freedom, ignores the Bill of Rights and the Heller decision. New Jersey politics are an anti-civil rights bulldozer and a spreading cancer. The Coalition of New Jersey Firearms Owners, a tax-exempt nonprofit, has a goal to defeat justifiable need, reverse course on all anti-freedom laws, and render aid to other jurisdictions by filing Supreme Court-bound litigation. CNJFO is a beacon of freedom behind the Iron Curtain in New Jersey. Join CNJFO's strong, enthusiastic patriots. Support the Coalition of New Jersey Firearms Owners today. Protect all our rights and return freedom to the Garden State. To donate or learn more, go to cnjfo.com.
And welcome back to the news segment of the Polite Society podcast presented by the Second Amendment Foundation. Our first news story, we're gonna, you know what? I'm gonna rearrange things here a little bit because the 800-pound gorilla is not in show notes. Since we were last on the air, there's been a verdict in the Kyle Rittenhouse case. Came back not guilty on all counts. If you tune into the Daily Bullet or the Weekly Bullet, you've heard from me about this. You've heard from Charlie about this. You heard from Alex Uli on Friday. And we talked about this a bunch. But for those of you who just tune in for the Polite Society podcast, we haven't discussed it yet. So I think we're just going to do a real quick around the horn and give opinions. Robyn, what did you think when you heard about the verdict coming down?
It was really fascinating. So I was actually sitting in the Milwaukee airport when the verdict was announced. And so there were a lot of Kenosha locals around me. And so I was not surprised at all with the verdict. Of course, it was quite emotional watching his mother. I can only imagine how she felt. The relief she felt. But it was really fascinating for me watching other people from that area calling home quickly to prepare in case there were riots. That was the most interesting part of all of it, was just watching the locals scramble to call home and make sure that they knew where their loved ones were and that everybody went home. So that was, but yeah, as far as the verdict itself, I wasn't surprised.
All right, John, you're next in the rotation.
Well, I mean, my wife actually had an interesting comment about the case. I mean, we refer to this case as the Kyle Rittenhouse case. There's a case going on in Georgia where it's referred to as the Ahmaud Arbery case. Now, why is it in one case that it is the defendant, the case is known by the defendant, and the other case is known by the victim? She just found that an interesting juxtaposition by the media, how they refer to it. And I think probably one of the best comments I read on this case is that the right to self-defense was vindicated in this case. And it's not just Kyle Rittenhouse who was vindicated that day. And I don't remember the guy's first name, but an African-American whose last name was Coffey was also vindicated on self-defense charges that same day when he had been basically shot at police who came in his house unannounced, undercover, and he had no idea that they were the police. And he was found not guilty on self-defense grounds, just like Kyle Rittenhouse. I am extremely gratified that those jurors took their job seriously and rendered the verdict that they did, because I think it was the only just verdict.
Okay. Charlie, we talked briefly today, but I don't think we talked specifically about the Rittenhouse case. What was your reaction when you heard about the verdict?
I think it was a relief, like Robyn and John both said, that it was a relief that it was it's okay to be able to defend yourself. And I've had conversations with people that all go through the whole he shouldn't have been there, he shouldn't have had the rifle, and then you hear all the misinformation that these people get, and then you say, no, that wasn't the case. He had family that lived in Kenosha. It wasn't his rifle. He borrowed it from somebody else. You go through all of that, and then they say, well, he shouldn't have been there. The people the rioters probably shouldn't have been there as well. But just because you're someplace where you're not supposed to be, or you probably shouldn't be, doesn't mean that you can't protect yourself in a situation where someone's attacking you. And I tried having a conversation with a friend of mine and say, listen, let's set all this aside. Are you okay with I think one of the guys was 36 years old. Are you okay with a 36-year-old man beating up a 17-year-old? Like, do you not think that's lethal force? Do you not think a 36-year-old man could whip a 17-year-old kid? So it's good that self-defense came out here, and I would kind of like to see him sue everybody and become the next Nick Sandman and make a bunch of money, because he's not going to be able to get a job anywhere for a very long time.
Yeah, amen. I want to get some.
I mean, it's almost as if he's going to have to legally change his name, and if somebody says, "Oh, aren't you Kyle Rittenhouse?" Oh, everybody in the world has a twin, and you must have got me confused with somebody.
That's my doppelganger. Right.
Yes.
Exactly. Yep. It's his middle name.
It is sad that he's, he'll be toxic to any future employers, but I'm sure he'll get a movie deal out of it all. But it has sparked a lot of really good conversations. I told my son, well, legally, this is the law. I better not see you there. Right. I don't want you going and doing this. So it is good for us to still have those conversations.
Right. Yeah.
And one of the things I did hear was that a gas station that he was outside defending was actually owned by a relative. Now, we have always made the case you don't need to necessarily defend property. Okay. Property, that's what insurance is for. That said,
That said, the police were told to stand down. So there's true. That.
One of the best comments... go ahead, Charlie.
Keep going.
Well, one of the best things on the media I read in the last week or so was by a woman named Barry Weiss, who used to be an editor with the New York Times. And she said, a year ago, I thought he was a white supremacist who crossed state lines with an illegal gun to kill black people, etc., etc. Now I know he was a 17-year-old kid who had relatives in Kenosha, who borrowed the rifle, who did not kill black people, who was not a racist. And it was probably one of the reasons along the way that she kind of got sick of the New York Times, and she was a liberal and you were not liberal enough, so you're kind of, to use that wonderful word from the Nazis, you're an Untermensch.
There you go.
Interesting. Cheryl Todd, go ahead with Charlie's comment.
Yeah. Rittenhouse on with Tucker in 12 minutes. This is obviously, some of these comments came in a little bit ago. Actually, it happens in just about 2 minutes. So then John says, nothing but a political witch hunt. Huge win for the country, justice, and self-defense.
Amen.
And then one more, Dana says, so much of the press and social media are still getting it wrong, calling it white supremacy. You know,
Well, also calling it murder. He was called out by media outlets as a murderer. So right there, they were trying to step on the right to self-defense from the beginning.
Yeah.
Our good friend Cheryl Todd posted some video of a woman from CNN that was kind of backtracking on all of the stuff they've been putting out for the last 14 or 15 months. And it was kind of an interesting video to watch because the lady said, well, it's kind of what you were saying, John, as they're backstepping and saying, oh, hey, I didn't know this, I didn't know that, I didn't know this, because we get all this wrong information from the legacy media folks that don't really care what the narrative is, that will use murdered rather than killed, or over the last few years, I'm really trying to get specific about things and say, there's a difference between murder and killing, and you can shoot someone and they die. Like, they're not necessarily all the same. I get they're all the same results, but they're not the same intent.
Intent, right. I still am questioning why the defense put him on the stand, though. I haven't watched any of the pundits address that, but I don't know that was the best move.
Right. I did see a video of the attorney, and he said that the attorney, Rittenhouse's attorney, came out and said that he's never lost a case when he put the defendant on the stand. And he said it always works in his favor, risky. So that's why he did it. It is risky. Absolutely. And the most cold-hearted thing to me was to see all the anti-gun folk crowd come out and make fun of him for breaking down. Dude, really, this guy shot 2.5 people, and saw his life. Probably saw his life flash before his eyes at 17 years old, and he's having a breakdown about it. He's being called a murderer. He's being called a white supremacist. All this stuff is being put on him at 17 years old. There's no way he shouldn't have broken down, And then you hear people say, well, he wasn't really crying, and those are fake tears, and he's got a weird face when he cries. Dude, really? Is this what you're... a little aggravating.
I can't imagine that he does not suffer from PTSD.
Oh, of course he does.
Oh, I'm sure from the entire incident, not just the fight, but the fight after the fight for his freedom. I'm sure all of it is going to haunt him for a long time.
Being in prison, in jail.
Yeah. All of it. I mean, the last 14 or 15 months this kid's had to go through. And then,
there's some cool memes of him now, though. If he Googles
all
the cool memes.
Right. But I mean,
one riot, one Rittenhouse.
I would say that the trauma is honestly more from after the event and his treatment after the event than probably the event itself.
Oh, sure.
I have no way. I don't know the man. I've never been introduced to the man. I have no way to say. That's just my own supposition.
Yeah. I mentioned this on the Daily Bullet with Paul. There's a series on Netflix called Death by Media. And it was people that their story came out and they were beaten up in the media. And, sometimes these people committed suicide after they did after the one guy shot somebody and then ended up taking his own life because of all the media pressure. So it's kind of an interesting take on things, he's got to have some sort of PTSD.
We've burned up a full 15 minutes. Let's move on to other stories here to try and I think we're going to be a little long tonight, but we may make it up. I want to go to this first story, and this is, if you live in Los Angeles County, good luck. The local DA announced recently he was releasing a convicted murderer after 6 years of a 50-year sentence. Police are telling people to cooperate and comply with criminals and be a good witness. This comes in one of the areas with the strictest gun control laws in the nation. Cooperate, be a good witness, because
you might die.
Yeah, but at least you'll have a good description of your murderer in your head as you die.
Yeah.
I'm going to say if you live in Los Angeles, do everything you can to protect yourself legally, please. And one of the things you can do to protect yourself is get out of there. Or if you
Although
choose
somebody's
not
got to
to,
stay. Yeah,
if you
somebody's
choose
got to
not,
stand up. They need to stand up to it.
if you choose not to get out of there, certainly learn how to vote.
Yeah, if you are leaving LA, do not bring LA politics with you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, don't come to Austin.
There's a meme that has gone around up here for quite a while. For all of you who are coming, who are going to be coming to South Dakota for the freedom, we've done you a favor and made you a map, and there's a map of Nebraska there.
We have the same, and it's
awesome.
in the shape of Oklahoma.
Okay.
We've been more successful in North Carolina. We pushed them off to Virginia.
We have big billboards that say
Unfortunately.
"Don't California my Texas."
There you go.
Nice.
Our next story, Ohio, and I just did an interview. It'll air tomorrow on the Daily Bullet. I did an interview today with Dean Reek of Buckeye Firearms, and it is a real. I'm going to go beyond possibility. It's a real probability. By the end of the year, they're going to have constitutional carry. They're going to become state 22 of constitutional carry in the United States.
Well, that's great news because Amanda always says Ohio's going to be state 39.
My question is Governor DeWine going to sign the bill?
Dean was under the impression that he would. He's got DeWine has a written promise. Now, I don't know what form that written promise is, but they had gotten written promises from DeWine for two bills. One of them was for a emergency powers, which is also going through, and for constitutional carry. So we'll see what happens. They are politicians. A politician breaking a promise, say it ain't so. But
right. It's it was signed in invisible ink,
right,
or disappearing ink.
Right. Yeah. And John, when I think of money, I think of John Richardson because he is the person I know that is the most expert on money situations. J.P. Morgan Chase has been yanked from a $700 million municipal bond after the bank's stance of guns drew criticism from state officials. This, I believe, was in Louisiana. John, if anybody would know anything about this, you would. What's your take on that story?
Municipal bond deals are very profitable for the underwriter, which would be, in this case, J.P. Morgan Chase, or could be Bank of America. Large, don't have to be Wall Street banks, but large investment brokers, investment banks. Let's just say they get 1%. Mm-hmm. That's $7 million in revenue. It probably might be more than 1%. So you do enough of these deals, and it becomes, as a lot of politicians like to say, real money. So yeah, $700 million is not even that large of a deal. Lots of them are multi-billion. Yeah. So, in states like Louisiana and Texas being much larger, much more important, becomes a real issue. If more states would do that, it would, I think, whip some of these semi-anti-gun banks back into shape.
Yeah, we're talking, these are municipal bonds. These are city level, but this is for like building a new sewer system or extending a highway.
Could be state
like
level too.
Oh, okay.
State or local, state, county, or municipality.
Okay.
And sometimes it could be a new stadium, it could be a new hospital. There might be a hospital authority that allows you that they would issue a bond on behalf of St. Mary's Hospital in Sioux Falls. I don't know if there's a St. Mary's, but something like that.
Okay. All right. All right. Well, let's see. What else have we got here? Anything else we should be talking about in the news segment? I'm hearing crickets. Charlie.
Yeah, I marked the story about the Ohio legislature is about to pass new legislation for teachers and other school workers, and the new law would set the training requirements for armed school personnel. This would include 8 hours required for concealed carry permits, plus an additional 18 hours of general training and 2 more hours of handgun training, and a yearly 2 hours of general training and 2 hours of handgun training per year. And the law passed on party lines. I mean, this is, kind of, I don't want to say it necessarily relates to the Tom Knighton story, but, it's getting teachers armed and getting them the training instead of just letting teachers carry guns without some sort of training.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and it also, that's a significant drop in the requirement previous to that, right? It's the previously.
Oh, yeah, I think they were pushing for like 700 hours of police training.
Yeah, it was all law enforcement training. Yeah.
Right. And my attitude was, if you're making teachers go through all of this, then let them have the ability to arrest high school kids who are bringing pot into schools. Like if you're going to give them a badge and let them carry everywhere that they go. Mm-hmm. If you're going to make them jump through those hoops to be a police officer and have the same requirements, give them a badge. Let them be a police officer.
I agree. If they're
kid doing donuts in the parking lot.
Yeah.
Right. Drinking in the, bust kids for drinking in the baseball dugouts or something.
Wait a minute.
Not that I ever done that, but
you guys weren't hanging out at my high school, were you, when I was there?
We were all young at some point.
Okay. All right.
Back in my youth, I was a young man.
All right. Well, as long as you guys weren't anywhere near the 4-H barns, we're still cool.
Barns.
All right.
I didn't even know there was such a thing.
A 4-H barn? Oh yeah. All right, we're gonna just go ahead and roll on from here. That does it for the news segment. We're gonna step aside. When we come back, we've got the DGU segment before I embarrass myself anymore. We'll be back right after this.
In 1928, Germany required its citizens to register their firearms, making possible Hitler's 1938 Nazi Weapons Act, disarming all Jews. Now ask yourself, what is the real consequence of registration? All in favor of gun control, raise your right hand. Brought to you by Jews for the Preservation of Firearms Ownership, America's aggressive civil rights organization. jpfo.org.
All right, we are back. This is the Defensive Gun Use segment of the Polite Society podcast presented by the Second Amendment Foundation. I got to looking, first of all, our disclaimer, as you hear once a week, every week, forever. These discussions are not legal advice. Some of us are trainers, but this is not formal training, and you need formal training. The Defensive Gun Use segment is intended as information, not as training. As always, the opinions of the hosts are only their own opinions and not those of any sponsors or other affiliations. And I do hate to do this, but I'm not going to read this. It's way too long, and we've
beaten it around.
Yeah. it's folks, it's about the Rittenhouse case. And if you watched 60 hours of the Rittenhouse trial last week, or tuned into hundreds of hours of, post-trial commentary, including, I feels like I've done about 8 hours of it myself, even though I haven't been on the air that much. You know what happened. Let's see here. I'm trying to see if there's anything else in here that we really haven't covered, and I'm just scrolling very fast. Is there anything about this that we haven't covered that we should?
The only thing I would say, I was just going to say quickly that the reaction to the acquittal by the jury from so many organizations, it's rejecting the rule of law, where where we depend upon a jury of our peers to make an informed decision on guilt or innocence, and we should respect that. I'm seeing mostly from leftist organizations, from Hollywood figures, whomever, that they're not respecting the rule of law. And they're almost canonizing the pedophile, the domestic abuser, as saints when they were far from saints. They were the scum of the earth. And that may be hate speech for some people, but they were. And I think they ran to the disturbance because it lit some fuse for them. It gave them a high. I can beat up on people and nobody's going to do anything to me. Mm-hmm. Fortunately or unfortunately, they were wrong.
It seems to me that the media is, there's a word for this and it's not coming to my head and I apologize, but when you, and they do this a lot, when you interpose your own emotions on and your own
projecting.
They're
projections.
They're projecting those things onto Rittenhouse, where they need to be projecting it on were the people that were attacking him, because those are the people that were let's get this guy, and especially those that were chasing him down, sees Rittenhouse running for safety, runs in front, ducks behind a car to attack him from blind side, for God's sake.
I think it'll be interesting to see what comes next in terms of an appeal, or if the prosecutor can file an appeal, and what this might mean for they say they can't for sure, because I was reading different things that the prosecutor was looking into jury tampering, but it's going to be interesting to see what the election results for this judge would be, because now everyone's talking about the judge and his opinion. So I think this is going to really wake up a lot of communities to look closer.
Where jury tampering, CNBC is guilty of jury tampering. And jury tampering.
MSNBC.
MSNBC, yes.
Yeah, MSNBC.
I was talking with a friend of mine, and he was like, the judge was interjecting everything, and I'm like, I don't really see it that way. The judge, when you have people that are going to attack someone else, and they're the ones that end up getting shot, you can't really call them the victim. You know what I mean? It's ridiculous. And they were talking about the judge. The judge was unnecessarily projecting, but he was letting it known that he wasn't going to, he was going to be on Rittenhouse's side. And I'm like, I don't really get that. You got to call a spade a spade. And if the person that got shot was also an aggressor, you can't call them the victim. So the guy was out there rioting. Call him a rioter.
Well, moreover, the judge was enforcing the rule of law on the prosecutor who was violating it. The right to remain silent is sacrosanct under the Fifth Amendment, and it cannot be brought up in court that the defendant invoked his right to silence. That is not to be brought up. The judge was absolutely right to take the prosecution to town. As I understand it, there is talk of bringing ethics charges against the prosecutors. Now, I also hear that the U.S. Department of Justice is investigating it to see whether or not we can bring civil rights charges against Kyle Rittenhouse, which is a joke.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Charlie, are you the one that posted the meme of the prosecutor with the jazz hands? Because that was really the funny. There's been some funny memes up there, but the prosecutor with the jazz hands was.
Have you seen jazz hands? No. That was good. Jazz hands.
The one time where I actually absolutely lost my cool during that whole trial was when not the main prosecutor but the second one got up and said, everybody takes a beating every once in a while, and I'm like, where were you that night, bat boy? Where were you when the riot was going on? And you swore to protect the people. Where were you? In the basement, you lazy son of a
gun.
Yes.
Let's face it. Let's face it. He was at the buffet line, okay?
Yeah. Sorry, I still. No, I don't take a beating, and I don't take a beating now. I don't take a beating ever.
Right, like it really is victim blaming and saying, well, hey, listen, you know what? She dressed very seductively. Of course she wanted, 7 guys to hit on her and to have someone slip her a roofie and rape her. Look at the way she was dressed. Yeah, of course, she shouldn't have done anything and she shouldn't have been able to protect herself, and she can't go up for, dress up and go out and have a couple of drinks and enjoy yourself and have a nice evening. You should, you shouldn't be doing this. You shouldn't be doing that.
Yeah. Dana says Jerry Nadler wants to have DOJ investigate miscarriage of justice. Yeah. That one could get me fired up too. All right. I think if we do this in a fairly timely manner, we could still be out of here before 7:30. Let's take our final break. When we come back, we'll let everybody know what we've been up to in 2A Media. We'll do that right after we hear from JPFO.
In 1928, Germany required its citizens to register their firearms, making possible Hitler's 1938 Nazi Weapons Act, disarming all Jews. Now ask yourself, what is the real consequence of registration? All in favor of gun control, raise your right hand. Brought to you by Jews for the Preservation of Firearms Ownership, America's aggressive civil rights organization. JPFO.org.
And welcome back to the final segment of the Polite Society podcast presented by the Second Amendment Foundation. Normally I would go, hey, Rob, what's been going on over at Slowfax? But Rob's got the week off, so I'm still going to encourage you to go to slowfax.wordpress.com. Check out what he puts up there. That means, John, you're up next. What's been going on over at your blog, Only Guns and Money?
I always thought the League of Women Voters was supposed to be nonpartisan and kind of middle of the road. I thought wrong. They are as lefty as they come, and they also reject the rule of law, at least when it applied to Kyle Rittenhouse. I had gotten a press release from them that just floored me. In other news, it appears Frank Tate has gathered enough signatures that he should be on the NRA board ballot in 2022 as a petition candidate, as he gathered, as he put it, way beyond the margin of Wayne. I also was offered to be made a Golden Eagle by the NRA for the low, low price of $250 a year. I would get a special sticker for my car, as well as some trinkets made in China. I unfortunately had to decline their kind offer. That and more is at onlygunsandmoney.com.
Was a nylon range bag in on that deal too?
No, there was going to be a ball cap and a knife. And I would get my name put someplace special. I'm not sure where that would be, but... And a special ID card saying that I was a golden eagle. I prefer to be a bald eagle, but I actually am happy to have a full head of hair.
Boy, I could tell you they probably have a good place, special place to put my name too. I don't have many friends in NRA headquarters, I'm sure.
I just got my endowment member card today in the mail, so they're mailing them out.
What was the offer I got? $250 for a $1,000 deal to be an endowment member, and I was like,
yeah,
I still ripped it up and
that's
threw
what
it away.
I paid years ago. Yeah.
Well, I do need a new range bag, so if y'all get one, send it over. My NRA ranging bag, or little duffel bag, man, it's seen a lot of days.
Oh man,
mine's falling apart too.
Yeah.
After about 3 trips to the range, I don't think there was enough recognizable that I. Anyway, yeah, I just my personal opinion has been, I'm speaking for Paul Lathrop, not for anybody above me at the reins at Second Amendment Foundation. My personal view has been, we need a strong NRA. The way to do that from this point forward is with different leadership, and I've not given up my membership. I still have my lifetime membership. I will not be expanding it. I will not spend one more penny. I'll not give them another thin dime until leadership changes, and I made that very publicly known. So,
yep. Same here.
All right. Let's, Robyn. You do everything with a girl and a gun, and you write a lot. You do a lot of other things. What have you been putting out media-wise lately?
Well, I have a couple new articles out. I posted an article. It was a guest contribution from one of our members, Eileen in Nevada. She did an article on the right to keep and bear arms beyond firearms, talking, of course, about knife rights. So that was a really great contribution. I also sent out a survey to all of our membership on simulators and how they're used in training. I was interested to get their feedback while we worked with a number of different simulator manufacturers and get that kind of context in terms of training, especially training new shooters, but how simulators are played into someone's training. And then finally, I just published a review on the Mantis Laser Academy. I've been using it for a few months in my dry fire practice, and it's been pretty fun. So I shared that review online at agirlandagun.org.
Very cool. Charlie, riding shotgun with Charlie, or Charlie's Gungrams, or any of the other forms of media you do. What's been new? What's going on, man?
I actually published episode 130 of Riding Shotgun with Charlie today, and the show featured the firearm historian Ashley Lubinsky. What was great about this is we were in Dallas. We went down to Dealey Plaza. We walked on the X's where Kennedy was shot. We drove down the center lane at 11 miles an hour. We took a picture with the grassy knoll. I have a picture of both of us pointing in 3 different directions to show you where the shooters were coming from. And I had a lot of fun with her. She's a great gal, and I put that show out today. And I thought I usually put shows out on Tuesday, but since today's the anniversary of the Kennedy assassination, I thought I would put that one out today since we were right where Kennedy was shot.
And I got it this has been 2 hours ago, so hey. But as we said during the Daily Bulletin, was this like a returning to the scene of the crime thing, or?
I'm telling you, I love the Kennedy assassination. Brent Amston actually suggested a book about the assassination of both of the Kennedy brothers, and I swear to God, the book's this thick. So it's going to be something I might read by the time I'm dead. But
well, I do have this question to ask you guys. Where were you when Kennedy was shot?
I can't say. I could have been on the grassy knoll. I can't tell you.
I think I'm the only one that was alive.
I was not around then, but having grown up in Dallas, every time someone came in town, we either had to take them down to the school book depository or out to South Fork to see where the show Dallas was filmed. So those were always the two places that family and friends wanted to see. So I definitely grew up. And I remember in middle school, I think it was the anniversary, the 20th anniversary or something of it, and it was on all these TV specials for weeks and weeks. So growing up in Dallas, it's definitely always inundated with those facts and the history. So I'm glad you got to go to the museum, Charlie.
No, I didn't go. I wish I went to the museum. I want to check it out more. But
yeah,
speaking
great, you should.
Speaking of where were you? I love the line from the movie When Harry Met Sally, where Billy Crystal said he was dating a woman, and he said, "Where were you when Kennedy was shot?" And the woman said, "Oh my God, Ted Kennedy was shot."
Wow.
Yeah, she was young.
One would, yes. All right, well, I think we're going to go ahead and set it aside if I can find my way back to show notes, because even though I've said it 602 times, if I don't have show notes up, I might not say it correctly. There we go. That's where we're at. That does wrap up another episode of the Second Amendment Foundation's Polite Society podcast. I'd like to thank Tom Knighton for joining us today. So for Amy, Dana, Tracy, John, Susan, Amanda, Robin, Charlie, and Rob.
Until next time,
stay safe.
Be aware.
And we'll see you down the road.
The views and opinions on the show you just heard are those of the host and the guest and are not necessarily the views of any sponsors or other affiliations. But hey, not everyone is as smart as we are.
Okay, before I go where we've stopped recording, before I go totally offline, I want to prove to, where is my button? I gotta find, there it is. I want to prove to everybody that not always when we're on the air is this the only thing we're doing. This is my Facebook feed. You see, 1 hour ago when we were deep in the show, Charlie Cook posted Frank Zappa in France, and then below that, he tagged somebody and said, and the YouTube, Jerry Lewis, "Hey lady." So yeah.
Multitasking.
I'm telling you, man. I'm telling you, we were in break, I'm sure. So.
Of course. It's when you guys were not beating up on it.
Yeah, the 3.5 seconds, yes. All right, everybody, thank you so much for watching and for coming in and commenting. And thank you. Again, we're at 602 episodes. We wouldn't have made episode 6 if you weren't there. So thank you. And come join us again next week. And until then, stay safe.